From the Cervera newsroom in sunny Miami, welcome to the Miami Real Estate Podcast, your home for expert insight on all things Miami real estate. I'm your host, Omar DeWint. Let's get started. Welcome back to How to Be a Top Producer on the Miami Real Estate Podcast. We're breaking down the highly effective habits of the industry's top producers and rainmakers. Today we're sitting with John Reza Parsiani, our resident celeb realtor here at Cervera, and an all-around rainmaker. John, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So we're a little bit of background for the audience on John. He is a member of our development division here at Cervera that's selling pre-construction, new construction condominiums on the Aria on the Bay sales team, one of the most exciting new projects in Miami's arts and entertainment district, just north of downtown. He sold last year, or total, I believe it was a little over 78 million, close to 90 million in sales in that time. You're number one top producer on the team in 2017. Timbaland, Mark Anthony are among the bold-faced names that call him a realtor. And outside the office, he's a home run hitter on our Cervera kickball team, the Fighting Orange, and a member of the Master Brokers Forum, board member as well for the Asian Real Estate Association of America's Greater Miami Chapter. So, you know, long resume there, John.
Thank you. I try hard.
So speaking of the Asian Real Estate Association of America, you're also my roomie when we travel abroad to conventions. I haven't seen you since Seattle, so have you been since then?
I've been great. I traveled a lot, actually. That time I was in Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, Hawaii, back to New York, back to Miami, back to New York, and here again. So it's been a lot of traveling, which I love to do for work as well, and it's been great.
Excellent. So we're going to hopefully extract some real good insight from you today for our audience, our realtors, entrepreneurs that are there. But before we get to it, I have a bit of business I've been meaning to ask you about, and that is going back to Aria. When we were in San Diego, when we were in San Diego last October for the national convention for Aria, I realized that you were a bit of a card shark, a poker, a poker ace in the Aria poker room. What's that about? When and how did you become, so good at poker?
Well, I think poker is a little bit like life, right? You do what you can with the cards you're dealt.
Okay.
Sometimes you hold them, sometimes you fold them. And sometimes you fake it till you make it,
Well, you faked it pretty well there. I mean, you had some pocket aces up your sleeve.
It was good times. When you have a winning hand, you have to go all in, just like you have to do in life. So yeah.
Well, I want to give a shout out to the San Francisco chapter of
Absolutely.
Aria that hosted us for that tournament during the national convention, and we're looking forward to seeing all you guys, Sonny, Gavin, and a lot in Vegas.
Absolutely.
This coming October. That should be a fun one.
Bring your money, guys.
Bring it. Johnny's going to take it. And I heard a rumor that for Vegas, that the Miami chapter is going to have a house right there off the street.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be a fun trip this time, and Miami's going to represent us.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. So, all right, so let's get started, John. We're talking today about being a top producer. Let's take me back to the beginning. We all have our stories, right? You're from Sweden. That's correct.
The blonde hair and blue eyes, don't let that fool you. Persian originally.
Okay.
So what a lot of people don't know is, going back to the beginning, I was born in the city of wine and poetry, a city by the name of Shiraz in southern Iran. And it was a beautiful time early on, but then the country was going through a revolution at the time, which ended up being a 10-year war. My family at that time, after all the craziness, decided to get out of the country. And I do remember many nights and many days where my parents woke me up and we had to run down to the basement and, with the bombers overhead.
Wow.
And I remember looking out of the windows and seeing the sky light up with anti-aircraft guns and everything. And for me, it was a video game in a way. But I do remember, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The country kind of transformed politically, economically, socially. It was devastation, and it's been ever since, unfortunately. But yeah, I do remember those the aftermath, the bombings, the war, and all of that. And then we left. Destination was Sweden. On the way, we lived in India and Singapore for a few months.
Wow.
That was
Two places I want to visit.
Right. Amazing places, both of them. A big contrast to each other. So that was an amazing time for me as well. Turbulent, to say the least, in that age. I was 9 years old when we left. And then going to a pristine, beautiful country of Sweden, which I think is an amazing country. It's a piece of heaven on this earth. But at the time, it was very turbulent there as well, because getting there and looking like I do, not blonde hair and blue eyes. I remember in the very beginning in Stockholm, when I moved there, I remember a neo-Nazi parade. I mean, skinheads with swastikas, marching the streets there.
What year was this?
This was back in the 80s.
Okay.
So, there was a lot of those groups around. It wasn't safe for someone that looks like me to be out at night in certain areas. So it was a challenging time for me as a teenager growing up there, for sure. I was one of very few handful of students in the entire school that I was in that was not that looked the way I did and was a foreigner in that sense. So I went through some very interesting times there, beautiful as well. I think the education system is phenomenal. It's a beautiful country, but I had enough of it, because at that time, when I was about 19 years old, this passionate youth that I was in, and you want to belong. And
right.
I never felt like I did. And every day I felt like someone and somehow would remind you that you don't really belong if you look like me. And oftentimes through a gesture or maybe even a direct comment. But I said enough is enough, and I applied to universities here in the United States.
Okay.
Moved here, and the rest is pretty much history. Been here ever since, and I go back to Sweden. My sister lives there, and I visit, but this is my home.
So when you came to where did you end up going to school?
Embry-Riddle at first.
Oh, in Daytona.
Yes,
I think I mentioned I wanted to be a pilot. That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of my college buddies are. I went for aviation computer engineering. Was the major at that time, and that's kind of went from there.
And so leaving school, I believe you started working with Delta, is that?
Correct. I got a summer job with Delta, and as it happens to be, because I was advised to go into the computer engineering field. It wasn't my passion, but it came natural, it came easy for me at the time. Technology was easy, so it was not something that I had an interest in, and therefore in school I did not do quite well when I was my GPA was something like 1.5 or something insane, and it was Daytona Beach, and at that time you could drive on the beach, and had a convertible, and it was a good time. So school was, especially if you're not interested, there's enough distractions when you just move into the United States. Beautiful sun from an extreme, like mostly winter country to a mostly summer.
Right.
I always joke and I say, we have two seasons in Miami or in Florida, this summer and last summer. So those are our two seasons.
I haven't heard that one.
As opposed to this winter and last winter, as it tends to be in Sweden. So there was a lot of distractions here for me as well, but not having an interest in the field that I was in made me not perform so well. So I got a summer job with Delta Airlines, and I quickly, got promotions very quickly and progressed.
That was in what department?
It was actually, I worked in everything. I worked as far as cargo, supervisor, ticket counter, gates, Crown Room Club, and then ended up as the Southeast sales and marketing manager, account executive there. So, and that was my last position with the airline.
So, that was before you jumped to real estate, right?
Correct.
So, talk me through that a little bit, because I recall in a conversation we had, in the past, that you were by standard accounts doing well at Delta in the position in the sales that sales position you just mentioned, but what you felt like maybe there was more opportunity. Like, what sort of made you jump from having a salaried, comfortable position to then being an entrepreneur, essentially, which those of you in the real estate industry are entrepreneurs? What was that like, and how did you finally make that decision? The airline industry is an interesting field. It's very seniority based. Okay.
Not so much performance. So you can outperform, you can do amazing things. I felt at that time, maybe it's changed since then, but I felt like my performance wasn't rewarded equally. It was, okay, well, you've done great now, but you have to wait until you second year or 5 year in order to get a raise or in order to get some kind of progress in your position even. So I felt at that time, it was the early 2000s, real estate was taken off, and by the guidance and forceful hand in some ways, which I needed at the time, of my mother saying, "Listen, this is a field maybe you should look into." I did, and at that time I was driving around 4 days out of the week, pretty much visiting different accounts, Bacardi USA, American Express, on behalf of Delta, and negotiating contracts. I think I was in charge of about $70 million worth of accounts. Negotiating bigger contracts with them successfully. So my mother felt, if you can do that for those contracts, you can certainly do that. Real estate is a very similar field. So I took that advice, thank God I did, and jumped into the real estate field. And obviously in the airline industry wasn't doing very well at the time either. It was post 9/11, as you can imagine. So, it was tough times. I got into real estate, and it's been an amazing run.
And what year was that you made the leap into real estate?
It was 2003.
Okay. So then, and by the way, for the audience out there, we're talking to, once again, John Reza Parsiani, as I like to call him, Johnny Parsiani, all-around Rainmaker and top producer here at Cervera. So, John, you made the leap into real estate in 03. Did you start with Cervera, or?
I did not. I actually started with a company called Ocean View International, which was a largest independent company, I think, in South Florida at the time. Something like, I think, 1,500 agents, something like. It was a pretty big company at the time. So, and I was pushed into, or kind of, they put me as a sales office manager for the Hollywood office almost immediately. As a new agent.
Interesting. Was that, I assume, because you had a corporate background?
Exactly.
Okay.
I had good discipline. I came from a scheduled, very rigid scheduled background in that sense, which I'm grateful for, because I think if you have a corporate background, you understand what it is to have it. I think schedule is very important.
Okay.
So I think in a corporate background, it teaches you to kind of stick to it. You can't be even 5 minutes late. So it teaches you those kind of important skills. So when I was with Delta Airlines, when I transitioned, I guess they saw the potential in me, and they put me as an office manager, as a fairly new agent. So I had to learn very quickly.
Sure.
So I had to curve my, learning. I had to shorten my learning curve very quickly to learn very fast. Because if I'm going to mentor or help other agents, so it actually helped me learn very quickly, very fast, all the different facets of the industry.
So for somebody who's jumping into real estate, let's say, or whether you're coming from another field or you just got your license, how did you set yourself apart, or what advice do you give to those out there on setting yourself apart when you come into this super competitive marketplace?
Great question. I mean, the thing that I did, what worked for me was, the way I look at it is this. When you're getting your real estate license and going through the school and the certification, you learn everything what not to do in the business. Nothing of what to do to be successful. Almost nothing, in my opinion. Once you get your license, it's like, okay, congratulations. Now what do I do? So that, for me, for you to be successful, then you have to start a 3, 6, or 9 month intelligence gathering, as I would call it.
Okay.
Go to all the classes, learn every single thing there is to be a success, work with teams, work with top producers, people that have been in your field, find your home, interview different companies and see, because all the different real estate companies are like vehicles to me. You have to find, a right vehicle that fits you best, that kind of complements your strengths and makes up for your weaknesses in order for you to excel. So in that sense, they're all different environments. You have to see which environment that suits you and you can grow the most in. So I think the intelligence gathering part is very important, not to jump in right away and just be about money. How do I make my next paycheck? It's important to have some savings before you get into the business as well, because real estate to me is very much like farming. You don't plant a seed and come back tomorrow and say, I want to eat from the fruits of that tree. You plant the seeds, you plant a bunch. You don't just do one either, because the environment can be rough, and that seed may never grow. So you grow many seeds, as many as you possibly can, and that you need to be on top of to nurture as well. Make sure they get enough sun, enough water, enough attention, and trim them as they grow and become the trees that they do, to later on then come back and say, okay, now I want to eat off of these trees and I want to eat off of these things. So it's not, I feel like a lot of the mistakes that many make when they get into the business is they feel like, okay, I'm going to get in and I'm going to make money almost immediately. Some might, because of their network, because of their luck or chance or whatever that might be, or skill. But I really do feel feel like it's, you have different seasons like farming. Plant the seed, nurture it, and then it grows.
Yeah, I think I like that in terms of being realistic, right, and sort of cautious and preparing for that. I think we had talked one time, it was you say in terms of if you had to give a recommendation, you would say what, 6 months worth of a sort of cushion to
Minimum.
minimum
Minimum 6 months.
and max like
I would say ideally a year.
uh-huh.
But not that it's going to take you that long. Honestly, it shouldn't almost. But it's good to have that cushion so that you're not desperate. Because in desperation, you make mistakes often. And you do the wrong things, and then you get frustrated, and then you might leave the industry.
Right.
So if you have that cushion, you're focused on doing the right thing for the right people, which is the most important thing, is your integrity has to be in place to do the best you can for your clients and not think about, well, I got to do what I got to do to make that money. So that is very important for me. So you have to really, if you have that cushion, you're focused on, how much I can learn, what's the best way to learn it, what's the best market I can serve, what are my strengths, and how I can, expand on those.
Awesome. So we talked about setting yourself apart, right? And like coming in and doing your information intelligence gathering. Then what would you say, what would be the 3 most important factors from that point, let's say 3 keys to success for any realtor?
What I say is you always need to work hard. Hard work, there's no substitute for hard work. You gotta, dang it. So you have to work hard. I think hard work is a key to any successful venture. There's really no replacement. Some people say don't work hard, work smart. Great, work smart, but work harder.
Right.
That will exponentially, give you back the success that you need. So hard work is the number one pillar, the number one thing that you can't replace. The second thing is being reliable.
Okay.
It's very important in being reliable and being consistent in some aspects. What does it mean to be reliable? Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it.
Okay.
Right? That's a big thing, and that builds trust. That builds rapport, so people know that they can trust you and they can rely on you. In real estate, half the challenge is picking up the phone. A lot of times you call people and they don't pick up the phone. So that's also
text message.
that's also a reliability, right? Issue. So being reliable is the second pillar, and I think the third and most important is integrity. Doing the right thing for the clients and for the buyers and for the sellers, doing what's in their best interest first and foremost, and never putting yourself above that. So I think that you can rise very fast. I always tell the agents that if I'm training them or my team, I always say you can rise very fast in this business and become very successful very quick with the first 2, being a hard worker and being reliable. You can do amazing things. But once you're at that altitude, for you to maintain that level, you need the third pillar, which is the integrity part. So those are the 3 things that I would say are very important.
Excellent. So once again, we're talking to John Reza Parsiani, and we're covering some interesting stuff here today on how to be a top producer. So John, we talked about 3 keys to success. Give me one thing I absolutely have to avoid, a mistake to avoid if I want to succeed.
Mistake to avoid, I would say stagnation comes to mind. Feeling like you know it all or know enough.
Okay.
I'm never the kind of person that say this is just who I am, because who I am is changing from day to day. Who I was today, I try to best myself every single day. My competition is never exterior; it's always interior. The person I need to beat is John Reza Parsiani every day, even if I'm better by 1%. In 1 year, I'm 365% better.
And give me an example of ways that you beat yourself, right? How do you keep yourself?
Well, in every way. If I make, for example, if I'm in general real estate, which is I'm not now. I'm in pre-construction sales, but I do general as well. If my goal is to do 30 calls a day, for example, the next day I would like to do 31. And the next day I would like to do 32. Or, in a way I also measure it is, okay, I'll do 32, but how can I do that better? How can I increase the rapport or the success rate of that? So I look for small ways to, big success is usually very small increments. People think, okay, well, I have to change, 180 degrees. No. If you just change small degrees, attainable progress is much more important than setting huge goals.
Right.
I believe in setting big goals also, but also be realistic in your approach to that goal. And
I like that, and there's so quantifiable goals, right? And you're measuring them. And then you remind me of a book that I read called Lead with a Story, which I recommended. It's very, very good. You read it?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, there you go. So, and in there, they're talking about, there's a chapter on sort of stoking that competitive fire, and it comes with those like numbers, and then, basically trying to increase them a little bit. But so you just sort of reminded me of that anecdote and strategy, I guess, if you will, especially for teams. You have a group of 3, 4, 5. You have certain numbers, and well, you know how it goes. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, for example, the best sports players, LeBron James, for example, comes to mind, right? Mm-hmm. You're looking at him. He never says, "Oh, I'm the best, one of the best ever, so I don't need to practice anymore. I'm good.
Right.
I've learned all I can." He has a coach, he has a trainer, and every day he tries to practice and do better than the previous. Mm-hmm. So if you look at that, it shows you that standing still, especially in this business, you have to run to kind of catch up or to stand still alone. So for me, it's every day you have to make progress, and you can never say I know enough, or that I'm the best, or I've achieved a certain level, so I don't need to learn anymore. I don't need to grow anymore.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of continuing to grow, right, and challenging yourself, there's a scary statistic, and that is Orlando Montiel, the marketing guru, was on the show a couple weeks ago, and he brought this up. He said that the average realtor working 40 hours a week with 10 years of experience is making $28,160 a year annually, right? So it's not necessarily like the $1 million listing lifestyle and income that most people, when they look at real estate from the outside in, would expect. But so what is something that you would say to somebody you were coaching or mentoring to do to go from being an okay producing agent to really hit a next level? Like, give me a specific strategy or tactic that you applied that
for someone that's already in the field.
You're in the field, right? You're working, but maybe you want to hit the next level,
okay,
right? You want to be a top producer, as we say.
One thing comes to mind.
Okay.
Get an assistant.
Oh, interesting.
That to me is
Why?
key. A lot of agents I see, they're checking emails, responding to text messages. They're very reactive. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, you have to be, in a sense. But if you want to take your business to the next level, and really be a true success in a financial sense, you have to get an assistant so that they can do the administrative task, and you do what I call income producing activities almost only.
Okay.
So you want to
break those down for me. So which ones are the administrative and which are the income?
Answering emails, anything that can be done on in a standardized way. Anything that doesn't take a creative field, if you will, to do that, right? So, for example, you have X amount of listings. The fact about those listings are there. You don't need to be the ones sitting there spending time answering potential buyers, for example, the facts about how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, and so forth. So you can have someone do that while you're out either selling that, like you promised you would do to the seller, or assisting other buyers, right? So to me, you have to focus on income producing activities rather than the administrative task. And for you to be able to do that, you need an assistant. That's really the only way. And a lot of times it's the chicken or the egg. So somebody says, well, I don't make enough to have an assistant. How can I pay an assistant? Believe me, if you force yourself to pay an assistant, even if it's part-time, even if it's remote, they're sitting in the Philippines,
right,
charging a few dollars an hour. Absolutely. So there are ways, especially with technology nowadays, there's really no more excuse in our field. So in that sense, I think if you get an assistant that can help you with those administrative tasks, it helps you think, okay, what are my creative ideas? Rather than being reactive, you become proactive. So what can I do? Where can I farm? How can I assist them better? What else can I learn if you need to, catch up on that as well? So it helps you be much more creative and put in place different ideas and fail and learn and continue much better, right? So, and I think, the road to success and failure is almost the same.
You mentioned failure, John. So tell me about your best failure and what lesson you learned from that.
I would have to go back to Embry-Riddle, the first time I attended university, which I, like I said, at 1.5 GPA, and I went to, when I got a summer job with Delta Airlines, I never went back. Also because financially, I was at that time with Delta making more than I would have had I gone back and completed my degree, and then hoped to have gotten a job. So it was also a smart decision from that aspect. But still, I like to finish things that I start. So about 6, 7 years ago, I went back to university, and this time I chose a topic or a major that was in my heart and had an interest in, which is business administration. So I got my business degree with a focus on entrepreneurship and business management. This time around, though, I did a 4.0 full honors.
Wow.
I did it right this
So
time.
you weren't driving on the beach in a convertible, letting your
Not at all.
hair loose?
Not at all. Funny enough, at the time, I was living in a Buddhist temple. So that's where I put myself in order to really focus and do it right. So I was actually living in a Buddhist temple for a year. Meditation, yoga, Reiki, you name it, and I did all of that spiritual side, which really charged me up. So once I graduated, with full honors and everything, and I got that, I thought about going back to the corporate world. It had an interest, and I almost was set in doing that. And then I met a gentleman at a dinner. Somebody introduced us, and I heard, John, you're in real estate. So and so is also, and I heard Cervera. So it was an older gentleman, and I shook his hand, and I said, very nice to meet you. So you're with Cervera? And he responded, no, I am Cervera.
Was this Javier Sr.?
Yes, indeed.
best first intro you could have. Right there.
Yes, indeed. So that was a very nice.
Don Javier, if you're listening, we love you.
Love you to death, for
Good
sure.
Character.
So he said, I am Cervera, and we had a big laugh about that. And he said, young man, I want you to come, and I think there's a place for you in our company. So at first, actually, I was a little bit reluctant. I said, no, I think I'm going to go back into the corporate world. I guess he saw something in me where he was like, no. You need to come at least to interview and come and see what we're about, and then make your decision from there, which I did. And almost 6 years later.
It must have been the Persian charm and dashing good looks that
Must have been.
He's like, I see potential in that guy.
Maybe because we had the same sense of humor as well, and I love him to death, and he's like my godfather in a sense.
Right.
I really, an amazing man, an amazing human being. I can't say enough good things about him. I respect him tremendously, and I look up to him, and he's truly a good man. So the rest is history. I came here, and he was really the intro into Cervera real estate for me.
Wow.
So that's really the failure of taking somebody else's advice as to what you should do when it's not in your heart and it's not your interest. Taught me later on that if the 1.5 GPA, 4.0 GPA, it shows you, they're both applied the same, but if it's somebody else's dream rather than your own, makes all the difference between failure and success. So to me, that failure led me to the success that I had with the new degree that I went after, and I got it, which opened the door and actually helped me. And people say, well, you didn't need to go back to school. And why? You were already in real estate. You were doing fairly well. But my biggest success came actually after that. And I think education is something that no one can take away from you, no matter where you are in the world. It's something that you have as a base for yourself, and the lessons you learn and the things you learn while you're studying. So that's that's school. But then I also afterwards put myself through what I call life university.
Okay.
Right? So which is everything from books to seminars to events. My library is quite extensive, and a lot of the motivational self-development. One of my favorite quotes was, I think it was Zig Ziglar said, motivation. I might be wrong about this, but I might be butchering it. But anyways, it was motivation. Motivation is not that important, but it's like taking a shower. You need it every day to be able to get up and do what you need to do if you want to be at your best. So for me, I went through Tony Robbins, which was a huge assist for me in that sense. I met him, his wife Sage. They're amazing people as well. He's built an empire on that platform, and I respect him tremendously. I went through all of his seminars. not just in terms of, and again, people from the outside look at it and they think that it's all about, rah, you're the best, but it's far from that. It's really getting to know yourself. All he does is he asks you the right questions that you need to ask yourself in order for you to get to know who you are and kind of move forward from that and remove the barriers that you have, as we all do, especially if you were raised in turbulent environments like I was and like most of us probably are in our own ways. It helps you kind of remove those barriers and really get to know you and get to know what makes you happy and kind of hone in on that and really go after it. So I did that. I kind of did self-development. I did the school part, and I did getting to know me as well, reading books, going to events, being with like-minded individuals. The environment is very important too. So when you do a Tony Robbins, not that this is a Tony Robbins pitch, but it
Tony, that one's for free.
That is. I expect my royalties later.
Yeah.
When you go in that environment, you don't. Most of the time, your cell phones don't work anyways in the closed environment that it's in the halls or whatever that is. So. And most of the time, you're so taken by what's going on in and around you and the information coming at you at the speed that it is, you don't have time to think about the outside world. So you're in there for 3, 4, 5, 7 days, depending on the seminar, almost completely disconnected from the outside world, especially when I went to Fiji, for example, for the health and wealth mastery. You're almost disconnected from your friends, from all the outside influencers, and you're just taking in new info, surrounded by people that are like-minded, that are learning to strive. And you have people there, CEOs that just sold their company for $500 million, and they've been on the beach for 6 months, and now they're like, okay, now what? What's next? I've done everything. So you have people like that, and then you have people that are just, struggling in life and want to see where they are and what they're going to do next. So you have all different kinds of people, but everyone's hungry. And everyone wants to learn, and everyone wants to grow. So you build very strong bonds almost immediately. Lifetime friendships in a matter of days with some people. So to me, that's invaluable. So I did that, and I think that helped me excel along with the yoga and the spiritual side. It was kind of a perfect mix to fuel me. It was like jet fuel. And it has been for the past 5, 6 years, because at one point during the past 5, 6 years, I didn't go on vacation for 4 years.
Wow.
And
so you were burning that midnight oil.
I really was, and I had the strength to do that because of what I built there. I kind of filled my tank to the max with jet fuel, and then I just took off, and it came to a point where now I feel like balance is important, but I also feel like if you want to achieve extraordinary results, you can't do that with balance, by being balanced.
Interesting.
If you want extraordinary results, you have to take extraordinary measures. Right? So everybody said, well, you have to be balanced. Fine. If you're at a certain level and you want to keep, maintain, and have a steady growth, fine, you can do balance. But if you want to kick it into next gear and kill it and just go after it and do what no one else has done in that period of time, you can't be balanced.
So you're in favor of the thought that at least for a certain period of time, you have to do extra. You got to go beyond, let's say, your standard 9 to 5, absolutely, if you will. And for our millennials that are out there listening, hone in on this, because I think it's important. So you got to put in the legwork, the heavy lifting, so to speak, in the beginning, is what you're saying, and it'll pay off later at a time when you can have that balance. Is that what I'm
Absolutely. I mean, we're in an age of immediate gratification.
Right.
We're in an age of if you want something, jump on Amazon, and 2 days later, it's at your doorstep.
2 days later, what about Amazon now? You get
Amazon, exactly, or Prime. Yeah, you
Prime
just get
now.
there right away. So I feel like that's the age we're in. So I believe in delayed gratification. I'm a big believer in that. In certain things, you shouldn't starve yourself, because then you burn out. And I almost did after the 4 years of not going on vacation. It affects your mind, it affects your behavior, it affects everything. And it's not good for you in a sense, because I pushed it to the edge. And I like doing that, because on my heart, I'm kind of a little bit in an extremist sense. I like to be all in or nothing, with the important things in life.
You're either first or you're last.
Almost, in a way, right? But failure is your best teachers well. When you win, you don't really learn much. When you lose is when you go back and you start, in the locker room when there's a winning team, all they're doing is celebrating and drinking and having fun. Exactly. There's not a learning process. There's not, how can I do that better? It's, I did great, good for me, yay. But the ones that fail are the ones thinking, okay, I should have done it this way. They're strategizing, they're getting stronger, they're learning. So I think I'm not afraid of failure at all. I actually welcome it. Fail often and fail early is one of the best lessons, and do it as much as possible because it teaches you. It's the best teacher in life. And
I mentioned this actually on another show. Was I bumped into or I met one of the executives from Facebook Mexico a couple weeks ago at the CMX 1-year anniversary party in Brickell City Center, and he mentioned that their culture, or basically their vibe there through Mark Zuckerberg is fail hard. Just learn, do it wrong, do it fast, and then learn from it and move on to the next one. So I like that.
Because I think, failing hard, it's painful, right? It's uncomfortable, it's painful. And if you fail hard enough, it teaches you of that pain will be a motivation for you never to kind of repeat the same mistake again. So that's a great lesson, because out of fear of that pain, or not wanting to avoid that pain, it kind of solidifies that you will never, under any circumstance, want to feel like that again. And that's also another kind of fuel that drives you. There's a push and a pull. You can create a beautiful image for yourself as to where you want to be in the future, what things you would like to have, which is very important. And that to me is kind of a rope pulling you. You should create that for yourself, but also what kind of pushes you are the failures, or the mistakes, or the things you should have done better, which we all have, and Lord knows I have plenty of, that push you away from that. So it's kind of like a magnet force. What one side pushes and the other pulls.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to John Reza Parsiani, or as his friends know him, Johnny Parsiani, a.k.a. the Persian prince that was promised. Game of Thrones reference for you there. John, this is amazing stuff here. As we wind it down, because I know you have some closings to get to at Aria, as we wind it down, I want to get into the rapid fire section. Going to hit you with some questions for outside of the field, outside of the lines. We touched on some good stuff there, but I'm just going to throw these at you. Don't overthink it. Okay. First and foremost, what's your biggest weakness?
Patience. Okay. Patience, my lord. It can serve as a weakness and a strength also. So I feel like, how it served me as far as a strength has been, I don't take the status quo. It typically takes 2 years for people to do this. No, for me, it's going to take 6 months. So I have unrealistic expectations like that. So lack of patience is put me in a position where I don't accept the status quo. I don't accept how, people came before you, had to do A, B, and C. Okay, well, fine. Maybe I can do it better. Maybe I can learn from that and do it faster or more efficiently. So it served me in a positive way that way, but in a negative sense, what it does is it creates frustration. Sure. Right. I have to do better with having patience in an area, and I'm trying to also focus when I get to the points where I'm frustrated, when something isn't happening the way I would like it, or in the timeline that I wouldn't like it. I focus on the things I can control. And surrender the rest. You kind of like do your best and surrender the rest. For me, I focus on everything that's within my control, and I say, okay, my focus is very important. Attention and focus is going to be directed towards that thing, those things that I can control, and then the rest is what it is. I'm not going to worry about it, and I just move forward from there.
So outside of real estate, what personal or professional projects give you the most joy?
Spirituality, debate. I'm always up for a good debate about God and meaning of life and philosophy.
Of the philosophical sort.
Absolutely. And history, big history buff. My icon and role model in life is always Cyrus the Great, the first Persian king. 500 years before Christ, he wrote the first human rights charter that influenced the United Nations, that the founding fathers, the American founding fathers kind of adopted his governing style and very much led to the influence directly the Declaration of Independence and so forth. So, I mean, for him to have more than 2,000 years ago, think about and write the first human rights charter, religious freedom, abolishing slavery, which wasn't done here in the United States, not even 100 years ago. that was for me extremely forward thinking, and that is someone that I look up to. So having a role model, having an idol in that sense is very important for me in life. So I would say that.
Cool.
Yeah, those are the things
And speaking of reading and materials, what's on your nightstand right now? What's a good recommended reading for our audience? Something that's profound and maybe
I'd say
impact your life.
everything from what I started with was like Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, all of these greats, Napoleon Hill, all of these amazing human beings.
Actually, Perla was on recently. She talked about Napoleon Hill as well.
Absolutely. So I think success is a formula. It's not if you follow X, Y, and Z, more than likely you will get there. To what measure you'll have success depends on your own drive. But if you follow those set rules, you will always get there. So in that sense, I would say those are the greats. Like I said, I'm also a history buff, so I always go back, and I'm a proud Persian in the sense of where my ancestors, what the contributions they had to society and all of that. So I read about those, and I think it's good. It's important to know where you're from. Those are your roots, and not to be disconnected to those does me a great service. So those are some of the books that I always read, but Audible is great.
Love Audible.
Love it. Because
obviously also the Miami Real Estate Podcast.
Yes, obviously. First on the list. But
but seriously, Audible is great.
It's amazing.
I listen to that all the time.
Because a lot of us don't have a lot of time to sit there and read a physical book, although I love that, and that's my ideal form of learning. But, when I'm in the car driving a lot, distances and so forth, or when I'm working out, I'm always, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, I have a rebounder, which I actually got from Tony Robbins seminars as well, which is a great way to detox and also wake your body up. The first thing I do at 7 a.m., I wake up and my rebounder is in the balcony. I go and I jump on it. I do about 10
what is a rebounder is a physical thing?
The ones where you jump.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like you have a rebounder like as a
No.
process.
Is that the right term? I think that's the right term.
Maybe.
I think
so. It's a product.
I think it's a product. Yeah, the
you
round,
jump on it, like a trampoline.
Trampoline. That's what
okay.
it. Maybe I'm calling it the brand.
Like what's a
maybe
rebounder?
that's the brand. Maybe that's a brand name or something.
It's like Scotch tape. Once you get so massive, you call it Scotch instead of actually tape. Anyway, exactly. I digress. Continue.
So I jump on my trampoline, if you will, in the balcony, and then that's my 10-15 minutes. And while I'm doing that,
aren't you on like the 20th, 30th floor? Isn't that a safety hazard?
I have a bar in front. So yes, my friends always say when they see that, they're like, "Are you insane? You can just jump over." But no, I have the bar in front, so that that keeps me from that. But I do my meditation. I do my gratitude. I send out the good positive energy to my family and my loved ones and the world and everything, and I start visioning my day, how it's going to go, my business, all of that. So I think that's the most powerful thing I do in the morning.
Sure.
And then when I'm in the shower, shaving, whatever, getting ready for the day, I have a speaker and I always put Audible, or I go on YouTube and I put all these self-development, if I want to learn about real estate, the greats. So I'm always in a learning mode. I'm always, kind of like everybody's so focused nowadays on feeding their body, eating healthy, organic, all of these. They're putting so much focus on that. But I think equally, if not more important, certain times than your body is how you feed your mind. When you watch the news, it's most often negative. So you're feeding your junk food. So for me, I like to be careful as what I feed my mind as my body. So I'm always filling it with everything from books and, what's a book? It's somebody's 30, 40-year lifespan condensed into something you can read in a week. So you can gain 30 years of knowledge in a week. You would be crazy not to. Right, and nowadays you have it access for free. You don't even have to go to the library or buy it or anything. You have it. So that's how I use it.
Excellent. So second to last question for you. You're an entrepreneur. You're always on a plane. You're at expos, ARIA conventions, winning poker matches. When you're not doing that, where can we find you here in Miami, sort of relaxing? What's your favorite hidden gem, favorite aspect of Miami?
Well, like I said, I haven't had much balance in the past 3-4 years, so my social life has been almost non-existent. But now I'm at a point where I'm introducing balance into my life. So Soho House, the Standard. I like boating. I like chess. Hanging out with friends. I'm a homebody a lot of times as well. So inviting friends over, listening to some jazz or some good music, and just connecting. So those are tennis is a big favorite of mine.
Right.
Playing sports, being out there.
I forgot to tell you this, but when we were in Seattle, you showed me that Chess with Friends app.
Yes.
And I downloaded it. I love it. I play it all
So
the
we got to
time.
play. You haven't challenged me.
Why? Because I've been preparing.
Come on now. Preparation is important. So
right.
Absolutely.
So, John, last question or final thoughts. Leave our listeners, our fellow entrepreneurs, real estate professionals out there. What message do you have for them?
I would say keep a positive mind. Honestly, I think that's the most important thing in life is keep a positive outlook. No matter what happens to you, I have a belief that things happen exactly the way they're meant to. So I don't regret things. That doesn't leave much room for regret. The Buddhist philosophy of being open to everything and attached to nothing is one of my favorite mantras that I go by. Really looking at everything in life as a learning lesson. Of saying, okay, this happened to me, and the Buddhists also believe in before you were born, which is a very interesting thought process. Before you were born, all of us were born. They believe we picked our families, our mothers, our fathers, our sisters and brothers, for the challenges that we need to learn in this lifetime. Our friends, all the challenges that come to us in life, they believe that we selected it in order to learn what we need to learn to go to the next level in the next life. So I think I love that philosophy because that
is cool.
That puts all of the responsibility squarely on your own shoulders, so that there's no victimhood, there's no one to point to and blame, and it keeps a positive point. It keeps your mind searching, okay, this horrible thing happened or this failure happened. I kind of brought this on in that sense. What can I learn from it? What's the lesson in it that's going to help me progress in life? So that's my way of
I love it.
That's
That's a great way to take us out. So it's been fun. I hope you had
a
nice time, right?
It's been great.
I have to say, you delivered on what you promised. You're like, I'm a diesel engine. Once you get me going, we got some great content there, great insights and information and advice. So thank you for being here. I'll let you get back to Ari. I think you guys actually, speaking of Ari, you have a few units left over there.
We have, right now we have about 52 units left, which represents almost about $100 million in sales.
Okay.
Which leaves a lot of work.
So you got some work to do. Okay, I thought we were ready to celebrate, but you have some work to do.
No, we're definitely in celebratory mode as well. We're doing about 20 to 25 closings per day.
Wow.
Which is
and you're in a hot neighborhood, East Edgewater. For those of you that aren't super familiar
Art
with
and Entertainment District.
Oh, Arts and whoops! Yes. I'm totally getting fired.
So A&E, no. A&E District. I
Arts
draw
and Entertainment District, everybody.
I draw that fine line because it's an amazing neighborhood. It's a great product. Absolutely, walking distance to everything. It's kind of like the best of New York meets the best of Miami because you really have. You have the walkability, you have the opera, the ballet, the theater, the museums all around you. You're on the water in front of a beautiful park that has all the sports activities.
Some of the best views, I think, in Miami over there.
The best views in Miami, I would say. You have gorgeous water views during the day, beautiful skyline of Miami during the night. I love the city. It's growing in leaps and bounds. If you're not in Miami, come visit me. You can check Parsiani.com. It's a shameless plug, but I'm happy to do it.
Hey, go for it.
And I would love to, to work with you, whether you're buying, selling, renting, or in the industry, and you want to work together. So,
love it, Johnny Parsiani. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we certainly enjoyed making it. We hope you will come back. We've got some more great content dedicated to informing, intriguing, and inspiring Miami real estate professionals. Where can you find us? We're on the podcast store, wherever podcasts are available. That's iTunes, of course. We're also on Podbean, Spotify, Audible, TuneIn, Stitcher, and Google Play. You can even ask Alexa about us. Go ahead and visit cervera.com/blog. That's where our newsroom is located. We've got some more great content there as well, market reports, and more. You can sign up for our newsletter there. Connect with us on social @CerveraRE or send us an email, miamirealestatepodcast@cervera.com. We would love to hear from you. So from all of us here in Miami, where the future is always bright, until next time.